What's up, guys? It's been a while, but just yesterday, the last final DLC was released for Dragon Age Inquisition. And I had stopped playing Dragon Age Inquisition for, well, forever, basically. I beat the game 1.5 times, didn't bother with the other two DLC, but I did watch them pretty faithfully on YouTube, different people's playthroughs and whatever. And I watched a playthrough, of course, with Trespasser, and in particular the final dialogue with Solas. Now, this video is going to be full of spoilers. I'm going to be talking about lore and spoilers, and so be prepared. If you don't want to know what happens in this DLC or in the Dragon Age Inquisition, then don't watch. So fair warning. But I have to say that this DLC was better than the others, and I would say it was better than the rest of Dragon Age Inquisition overall. It kind of reminded me of how Lair of the Shadow Broker had essentially outshone the actual game Mass Effect 2 as well as the other DLC. But in particular, I was quite moved by the final scene with Solas, with the music, the expressiveness the designers had put into his face, his words, which were chosen carefully, I think. An incredibly complex and interesting, and in some ways malevolent figure. And I almost feel motivated to somehow play through all of Dragon Age Inquisition again, minus all the grinding, I guess. But so what I want to do in this video is take the time to sort of think of my thoughts of Dragon Age Inquisition, sort of final thoughts after approximately years gone by, what I thought about some of the DLC as well as this final very revealing piece that they released. And I think eventually I will probably pick up the DLC if it goes on sale. But as I've told you before, I'm kind of waiting sometime in October, whether it's middle, beginning, end, to get my new computer. It's only then that I actually want to play a lot of these games. I feel kind of inadequate playing a lot of these games, and I don't really want to do anything for you guys, Let's Play-wise or otherwise, publish videos unless the quality is good. And I think that's best done with a proper PC. But enough of that. I've talked about that before. Going back to the things that bothered me in Dragon Age Inquisition, a lot of the stuff was technical. The grindiness, grinding stuff out, looking for little things, fetch quests. Fetch quests are, of course, part of RPGs to an extent. If you go to different places in Skyrim, they'll ask you to deliver a sword. There's an orcish mother who wants the sword delivered to her daughter. Then in Whiterun, you have to fetch the sword for this one guy and so on. So that exists, but the way it just didn't seem that fetch quests were well done in Dragon Age Inquisition, and they just felt tedious to me, at least. I didn't enjoy them. A lot of the mechanics I had problems with. How should I put it? I did enjoy to some extent the class system, but I'm kind of strict and anal retentive about having warriors act like warriors. In Dragon Age Origins, you would shield bash, you would sunder them, you'd have these attacks, but they would be not that flashy. And I know it seems the newer generation is into the flashiness, but in Dragon Age Inquisition, you could get an ability that would literally sunder the earth open and flames would come bursting out. That's magic. That's not a warrior. I had some serious issues with that, and that was an issue I had with Dragon Age 2, apart from the enemies dropping in from the sky and the ceiling. But I think this is a trend that we're going to continue seeing as BioWare continues to make Dragon Age games, and we'll get to what they talk about possibly as the next Dragon Age iteration. The flashiness, I'm just not cool with that. Skyrim seemed to avoid that for the most part. When I play a warrior, I want to play a warrior. I want to hear clangy sword sounds and shields bashing and things of that nature. And I don't want to hear the earth splitting open and fire coming from the pits of hell because you stuck a sword in there. Unless you're a mage, and you're not. So that was one of my issues, I think. And then sort of the animations for some of the specialty classes, the specializations. for a warrior, the magical shields encircling it was. This is something I'd prefer not to see, and I think a creative and good developer probably could create a system of warrior specializations and just abilities that lack all that flash, which the flash was just, for me personally, too much, all in all. Now, those are some of the technical aspects, the fetching and the grinding and the weird way warriors are portrayed. Same with thieves, rogues. I mean, the flashiness in rogues, barring bombs and chemical concoctions. But technically, those are the things that bothered me, and that doesn't change in the DLC, obviously. Well, as far as the companions are concerned, I have just mixed feelings. Some of them I just thought, I seem to have the most popular Sarah romance on YouTube, which I don't know whether I should be proud of that or not. No, I'm not really proud of that. With my dwarf romance, but that was kind of forced. There were some characters I just didn't like, flat out didn't like. Sarah was one of them. Not a huge fan of Cullen. He's okay. Loved Dorian, apart from, his gay issue, which I think was so minor, and I don't know why they stressed it so much, but actually I do, but we'll not talk about that. And Dorian looks slated to come back. Now, as I get spoilers, Dorian's father apparently had been assassinated in the DLC, and whatever his relationship to the Inquisitor is, whether it's a lover, a friend, or whatever, he has to return back to Tevinter to assume position as family patriarch, as it were, and to become a magister. And that is something he has to do. And it's hinted at the end of the DLC that as the dagger is thrown in the map, it's thrown in the center of Tevinter. We can assume that Dorian might be coming back, at least in some capacity, in the next game, at least as a major NPC, not as even a party member, but someone who plays the field of politics and has involvement with this. Like a lot of the game, this particular DLC was about the Kunari in a sense. The Kunari trying to purify the South with something called Dragon's Breath. Basically ride the entire land in flames and destroy everything and purify and then bring the Kun. I didn't find that terribly interesting, and we already know about that. But what I thought really was interesting was the stuff that was revealed. So many of us saw that semi-ambiguous ending of Dragon Age Inquisition, the full game, and thought, what's going on, what's happening, and we got the full story. Many things were revealed, and even greater questions were left open. There's still many things that we don't know. We found out from Solas here, and if you don't mind spoilers, check it out. It's a very kind of revealing scene, a powerful scene. The music is powerful. Solas is very expressive. You can tell this isn't some normal guy. Now, it's revealed to us that the Evanars are not gods. They're immortal mage kings, if you will. Sorcerer kings. Anyone ever played Dark Sun? So immortal sorcerer kings of a sort. And Solas Fenn Harel is the last of them, essentially. And what happened, they had murdered Mythal, and he banished them. And how did he banish them? He created the veil, this one guy. You imagine how powerful he actually is. He created the entire veil, the separation of the Fade from the world. And in doing so, he cut off the elves from their immortality. According to elven legend, it's because the humans arrived and they sort of polluted them. But no, Solas himself was responsible. And Solas seems to be just an incredibly complex character. He claims on the one hand, right, that he is against this claim to godhood. That is, his fellow Evanars claiming that they're gods. It's explained by him that there were long wars, and through a long process, they were war leaders, then kings and queens, and eventually they were revered as gods. That they claimed godhood, and Solas was trying to free them from the elven people from the shackles. But for a guy who's so against the claim of godhood, and maybe he is, in air quotes, just an immortal sorcerer or an immortal mage, elven mage, he sure thinks like a god. He he doesn't really, he talks a moral talk to a certain extent. In fact, he expresses regret that he wants to basically destroy the world, but destroying the world, that is, getting rid of the veil. He wants to tear down the veil that will destroy the world as we know it. That is the world of Thetis, and it will be reborn, and the elves can have their world back. Now, he realizes he's going to have to kill everyone to do that. And he said he finds it regrettable, but he's still willing to do it. And I think if we were to take a moral hard line here, we'd say, wait a second, Solas. You can't go on the moral speech and just go through this anyway. It's a really bad thing. And he stresses that he's not a monster like Corypheus, and he wants to give the Inquisition and everyone some time before their lives are extinguished. But it's hard to call him a man. I call him kind of a demigod. He's a demigod with a mission. He's a demigod that needs to accomplish something. And a lot of it is I see in Solas a kind of personal regret of regretting his own mistakes that he might have made. He certainly doesn't seem to regret creating the veil in the sense of banishing the false gods, the Evanars, but the regret that he does is you can see and sense is that in regards to his quote unquote people, what the elves have lost. And he feels this enormous responsibility. And he feels justified and absolutely certain in saying, well, sometimes you have to do terrible things. And there are different responses. I saw a couple of inquisitors talking to him. I saw the elven romance variety, which of course was the most tender and da-da-da. One of them I liked the most was the simple human friend. He was a friend of his. And he says, no, Solas, I'm going to redeem you. And he says, and Solas says, I want to be proven wrong. It seems like Solas has given himself a divine mandate that he doesn't really want to be true, but he has to follow it nonetheless. And he's made himself, de facto, the enemy of the Inquisition. I mean, he's giving them time, basically, to set up. But we know, or the Inquisition knows of his plans. And he's really a really complex figure. I kind of liken him to some sort of more sympathetic version of the biblical Satan, the Angelus Casus, the fallen angel. He has these sort of patches of redeeming quality here and there. But at the end of the day, he's pretty ruthless, and he's willing to literally destroy the entire world. Right? And when you think about what he says in the dialogue, if you watch it, about his fellow immortal mage kings, they wanted to destroy the world too. And in fact, he had to banish them from this world beyond the veil, because they would have destroyed the world. And he's proposing the same thing on some level, at least. They were apparently mad with power. But you can see that Solas himself is a bit mad with power too. He's a lot stronger than what we've seen previously. 2 years have gone by. He is officially more or less a demigod. But he's really convinced of himself, but he's also convinced of just how terrible his actions are. And it seems that wherever the Dread Wolf walks, and this was an appellation given to him by his fellow Evanars, the mage kings, the mage rulers, the false gods, because, well, they didn't like him for obvious reasons. He brings sorrow in his wake, and he really sees that, and you can see in his expressiveness in his face. I got to admit, BioWare did a really good job in giving you this aspect of Solas. You can see that he's power mad on the one hand, but not in a way that Corypheus was. He's also sort of deeply in touch with the suffering of the world, and not just elven people. And if you had a good relationship with him, whether romance or just a friendship, he acknowledges. The Inquisitor says to him, "We're not even people to you." And he says, "At first that was true, but you showed me I was wrong." And so he's willing to concede error, and yet he's so driven, this demigod, in pursuing what he has to do to his mind. And who knows what's going to happen exactly. A lot of things were answered, as I just mentioned. A lot of questions are left open. We still don't know exactly who the Tevinter Magisters were and what they saw in the Fade. We don't know anything about the Maker or Andraste really anymore. In the Descent DLC, we learned about the dwarves a bit, at least. and the Titan, and there's something about Lyrium, but we still have lots of questions about Lyrium. We still have questions about the dwarves and what the actual reason for them being cut off from the Fade is. So there are a lot of questions that remain open, and we don't know what happened to the Grey Wardens, although that's not too interesting by now because they're not terribly relevant. How do all these various mythologies fit in? Andraste, the elven gods who turned out just to be sorcerer kings, immortal sorcerer kings. A lot of questions are left open. And of course, you have the terrestrial concerns of politics, or Lay and Ferelden and Tevinter and the now defeated Kunari to going back to lick their wounds. And still a lot of questions. And I gotta say, this final DLC kind of got me interested in Dragon Age again. But then I think to myself, going through that entire game again, which I wouldn't want to play on my laptop, I'd wait till the real computer comes. I don't know if I could put myself through that because there's so much grindiness, and I'm just not sure. But I know I was quite moved by that Solas scene. There are different variants. I'd love to see. I haven't yet to see one where Solas is actually attacked by the Inquisitor, because that's an option, and just or sort of a hostile encounter. It's all been sort of medium lukewarm, or they're romanced or friends or whatever. So there are a lot of questions remaining, and you see in the final bit of the epilogue that the Inquisitor really has two choices. The Inquisition can try to redeem Solas, or it can just try to kill him at all costs. And we also presumably can now know that Solas probably absorbed the essence of Mythal based on what he said there in the most recent DLC and the dialogue that he had with the now deceased Flemeth. And it's pretty certain, based on what they alluded to, it's going to take place in Tevinter. Oh, and of course, your mark is killing you, your anchor, right? And you go back with losing half an arm. You're basically where the mark was. According to Solas, only an immortal elven sorcerer king could actually bear the mark. And since you're not that, it was going to kill you eventually anyway. So he kindly, or not so kindly, severs your arm for you. They don't show that, but you're still the Inquisitor, presumably, in charge of politically of the organization. And you probably can't adventure anymore. But the dagger is thrown into Tevinter, and I see a lot of possibilities. We also see Scout Harding, a lot of people were fond of, including myself there. And I think she might be a possible dwarven companion for the next Dragon Age, which is, 3 to 4 years off, so we could all be dead by then. And who knows what machinations Solas might have come up with. But there are a few really compelling characters in Dragon Age Inquisition, and Solas is one of them, I think. But it just never really sucked me in to the degree that I would have liked. But I'm kind of torn now with this one piece of DLC. It had for me a bit of redemptive quality. It's like the developers got together and said, hey guys, we did a really shitty job on so many levels. Let's try to put something nice together for the end. And yeah, at the very least, the last half an hour of the DLC was pretty meaningful. The combat with the Kunari, I haven't seen the scene. Apparently, if you let the Chargers, the mercenary company of Ironbolt, die, he will eventually betray you and side with Kunari. You can get married to various companions that you've had, and not that that's terribly interesting to me. No, I was mostly interested in the lore, and I think BioWare is certainly, this is their setup. They're dead set on telling separate tales. They're not interested in, as far as Dragon Age is concerned, in sort of trilogy. So a year or a year and a half, they have basically a year, they have their game, they're telling a certain story, and then they move on. So I don't think we'll be seeing a lot of guys coming back. Varric is Viscount of Kirkwall, and it's unlikely. I think Dorian will play a sort of an NPC route, or maybe a important figure, because he's in Tevinter. He is a Tevinter citizen, a magistrate now. Scout Harding we see a lot of, and I think due to the popularity, she'll return. And I think the BioWare, for better or worse, will finally break their taboo on the dwarven romance. Supposedly, they never did a dwarven romance because too many people would have likened it to pedophilia, but whatever. So I don't really know. I mean, please leave comments on this if you've seen this. If you don't want to get spoiled, then don't. But there are plenty of videos out now on YouTube already documenting the end, and the DLC kind of had a redemptive quality for me. It's the overall arc of Dragon Age Inquisition, and you do kind of feel, though, I think as an Inquisitor looking at what happened, it's kind of useless because you were just kind of a host for the anchor, and it parasite. Well, parasites require the host not to die. In this case, it didn't really matter. So severs the anchor from you. You lose your arm. So I guess you're just sort of a political figure now, and I guess it's a good wrap up for the Inquisitor. He's no longer an adventurer and so on. But I got to say, that final scene with Solas, whatever the nature of it was, I mean, it was well done, and I thought it was quite moving, and the music was excellent. And if BioWare could create an entire game with those kinds of scenes, well, that would be amazing. I don't think they can. Maybe they could do more of them. But meaning, I'm not just talking about revealing the lore, the expressiveness in the face. And maybe I missed some of that in the original game. I probably will do a playthrough of it again. Who knows? Maybe I'll even LP it with a new computer. I don't really know, but I just wanted to offer my thoughts on this latest DLC, and the Dragon Age Inquisition, series has now come to an end. And you can choose on how to direct the Inquisition at the end. I don't know how much impact that's going to have, but I mean, obviously you have to stop the mad elven demigod from destroying the world. That in itself isn't that a novel premise. It's just Solas is such a diverse character. He's not black and white, and I think that's what really makes him strong, and a strong villain, because he is a villain at the end of the day. He wants to do something that requires the utter destruction of the world as people know it. So, things to consider. Well, and as far as the new computer is concerned, I don't really know for sure, but I'm thinking probably sometime in October, mid-October, late October, I should be getting it if the gods favor me and I get enough money together. That should happen, and at that point in time, I'd probably like to start doing a lot more for this channel. It just doesn't feel right using the gaming laptop. It's inadequate. Different kinds of LPs, maybe gaming commentary. But LPs will be a lot easier to do if only for the rendering. But when the time comes, when I get to that bridge, I guess I'll cross it. But until then, leave comments. I'd love to hear what you have to think after years gone by of Dragon Age Inquisition, and what you thought of this DLC. I was impressed by most of it, especially, actually almost solely impressed by that final scene with Sola. So let me know what you think, and I'll check you guys out soon. Everyone, take care. Bye-bye.